The rain hammered Seoul streets like bullets from heaven. Kim Dae-ho pulled his designer coat tighter as he stepped out of Michelin-starred restaurant Golden Phoenix. The meal had cost more than most people made in a month, but he'd barely touched it. Another boring business dinner with investors who only cared about profit margins. His bodyguard, a mountain of a man named Kang, held a massive black umbrella over Dae-ho's head. Water bounced off the fabric like tiny diamonds in the neon light. The billionaire's Italian leather shoes clicked against wet pavement as he walked toward his waiting Bentley. "Sir, the car is ready," Kang said in Korean, his voice barely audible over the storm. Dae-ho nodded, checking his phone. 17 missed calls from his assistant. 3 emergency board meetings scheduled for tomorrow. His space technology company, Dae-ho Industries, was on the verge of the biggest breakthrough in human history. They were so close to cracking. Faster than light, travel that he could taste it. But right now, all he wanted was his warm bed and a glass of expensive whiskey. "Excuse me, sir." The voice cut through the rain like a whisper, soft, hesitant, but with an accent that didn't belong in Seoul. Dae-ho turned, his hand instinctively moving to his pocket, where he kept his phone ready to call security. A woman stood near the restaurant's back entrance, partially hidden under a small awning. She was black, maybe 35, with kind eyes that seemed to hold stories he couldn't imagine. Her clothes were clean but worn thin, like she'd been wearing the same outfit for days. Water dripped from her hair, but she stood straight, maintaining her dignity despite the circumstances. "Can I—" she started, then stopped, as if the words were too heavy. "Can I have your leftovers?" Kang stepped forward, his hand moving to his jacket. "Sir, should I—" "Wait." Dae-ho raised his hand. Something about this woman stopped him cold. In her dark eyes, he saw something that reminded him of his own mother years ago, when they'd lived in a tiny apartment and counted every one. Most billionaires would have walked away, called security, pretended not to hear. But Dae-ho had clawed his way up from nothing, and he recognized that look. It wasn't just hunger. It was the quiet desperation of someone who'd fallen through the cracks of society. "You're American?" he asked in English, surprising himself. Her eyes widened slightly. "Yes, I lost my job. I'm an engineer." But she trailed off, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I came to Seoul for a conference 6 months ago. My company went bankrupt while I was here. I've been trying to get home ever since." Instead of walking away, Dae-ho found himself stepping closer. Rain started hitting his expensive suit, but he didn't care. "What kind of engineer?" "Aerospace." Her voice grew stronger, more confident. "I worked on satellite propulsion systems for NASA contractors, ion drives, plasma thrusters, experimental fusion engines. Before the company downsized, I was leading a team of 12. Kang looked at his boss like he'd lost his mind, standing in the rain, talking to a homeless woman about rocket science. But Dae-ho felt something he hadn't experienced in years, curiosity about another human being 40,000 miles above Earth, invisible to human eyes. An alien scout ship hung in the darkness of space. The vessel looked like a massive spider, made of liquid metal, its surface constantly shifting and reforming. Inside, Commander Vextar of the Corvani Empire watched the interaction through sensors that could detect a heartbeat from orbit. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion among his species. Vextar had conquered 17 worlds, studied countless civilizations, but humans continued to baffle him. The wealthy human is engaging with the poor one, his subordinate Nick Sauer reported, her tentacles dancing across holographic controls. "This behavior doesn't match our data models." "Explain," Vextar commanded. In every other species we've studied, the strong dominate the weak, the wealthy ignore the poor, resources flow upward. Never down. But this human, she paused, checking her readings. He's showing concern for someone beneath his social status. Vextire's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Corvani had built their empire on a simple principle. The strong take from the weak. It was universal law, written in the DNA of every intelligent species they'd encountered, until now. Continue monitoring. He ordered, document this anomaly. If humans are truly different, they may pose a threat to our expansion. Back on the street, Deho made an impulsive decision that would change two worlds. I own a space technology company. Are you interested? In work, Keisha's eyes widened like she'd been struck by lightning. You're serious, very. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Real paper, not digital, old school. My name is Kim Deho, Deho Industries. We're working on projects that would make your NASA work look like toy rockets. She took the card with trembling hands, reading it in the dim light. You're the Deho, the guy who built the first commercial space station. Guilty. He gestured to Kang, who looked like he wanted to protest but knew better. Bring the takeout bag. Kang reluctantly retrieved a bag from the restaurant, filled with enough food for 3 people. Deho had ordered multiple courses but ate almost nothing, his mind too busy with equations and orbital mechanics to focus on food. Take this, Deho said, handing her the bag, and meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. The address is on the card. As Keisha clutched the food, tears mixed with rainwater on her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you. Just show up, he said, already walking toward his car. And bring your brain. We're going to need it. High above, the aliens recorded everything with growing bewilderment. They'd expected humans to follow the same patterns as every other species: selfishness, hierarchy. The strong crushing the weak, instead. They'd witnessed something that didn't exist in their empire. Mercy. 3 weeks had passed since that rainy night in Seoul, and Keisha Williams couldn't believe her life had changed so dramatically. She stood in the massive research facility of Deho Industries, surrounded by technology that made NASA's equipment look like Stone Age tools. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing real-time data from satellites orbiting Mars. The smell of ozone and heated metal filled the laboratory as massive 3D printers constructed prototyping. In components, are you seeing this, Park? Minna called out, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. The brilliant Korean scientist was barely 5 feet tall, but her mind was gigantic. She'd graduated from MIT at 19 and held 17 patents in quantum physics. Now she stared at Keisha's calculations like they were written in alien language. Keisha walked over to the holographic display, her fingers dancing through the floating equations. Numbers and formulas glowed blue around her hands as she manipulated the data. What part doesn't make sense? All of it. Minna laughed, but it was the good kind of laugh, the kind that came from discovering something incredible. You've increased our engine efficiency by 300%. Our Orion drives were already the best in the world. But this is impossible. Other scientists gathered round the display. Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo pushed his glasses up his nose. The math checks out. But the physics shouldn't work. It's about thinking differently. Keisha explained, pulling up a 3D model of their new engine design. The hologram showed a sleek, organic-looking device that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. Instead of fighting against gravitational forces, we work with them. We let gravity help us instead of trying to overpower it. But that goes against everything we know about space travel, said Dr. Petrov. who'd flown in from Moscow just to see Keisha's work. Exactly. Keisha smiled, remembering her grandmother's words. Sometimes the best way through a problem is to dance with it instead of fighting it. She manipulated the hologram, showing how their new engine would work. Look, every spacecraft we've ever built tries to break free from gravity. We use massive amounts of fuel to escape Earth's pull. But what if we could use gravity itself as fuel? The room fell silent as the implications hit them. Mina's eyes went wide. You're talking about turning gravitational fields into energy sources, not turning them into energy. Keisha corrected, using them like a river current. A boat doesn't fight the river. It rides it. From his office overlooking the lab, Deho watched through floor-to-ceiling windows. His Mars colonization project had been his dream for 15 years. The plan was to establish the first permanent human settlement on the Red Planet by 2080. It would take decades of preparation, massive ships, and enough resources to bankrupt small countries. But with Keisha's breakthrough, everything had changed. His assistant, a sharp woman named Lee Sojin, stood beside him with a tablet full of updated projections. The timeline has completely shifted, Sojin said, her voice filled with excitement. With these new engines, we could reach Mars in 3 months instead of 9. The fuel requirements dropped by 80%. What would have taken 50 years might now take 5. Deho nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. It's bigger than Mars with this technology. We could reach the outer planets, Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings. We could finally explore the galaxy. Neither of them knew that their conversation was being monitored from space. 40,000 miles above Earth, the Corvani scout ship had grown into a full observation fleet. 7 vessels hung in the darkness, their surfaces reflecting starlight like liquid mercury. The ships were alive, grown rather than built, their hull breathing slowly as they processed cosmic radiation for energy. Commander Vextar stood in the central command chamber. His 3 eyes focused on floating displays that showed every major human city. The Corvani had been watching Earth for months, studying humanity's potential as either allies or threats. The human leader elevated the inferior one. Mixara reported to the High Command, her tentacles manipulating controls that look like living coral. Now she contributes to their space program. This contradicts all known behavioral patterns. Admiral Zekathan materialized in the command chamber as a shimmering hologram. The leader of the Corvani fleet was massive, even by alien standards. His Karapachi was scarred from countless battles, and his forearms moved with the precision of a born predator. Explain this anomaly, Zekathan commanded, his voice like grinding stone. In their society, the wealthy human took a resource depleted, female, and gave her status, tools, and purpose. Vextar reported. She now advances their technological capabilities beyond our predictions. Impossible. Zekathan's mandibles clicked. In every civilization we've conquered, the strong consume the weak. Resources flow upward. The inferior serve the superior. Until they are no longer useful, the humans appear to operate differently. Mixar added, pulling up data streams. They share knowledge across social barriers. They elevate individuals based on capability rather than birth status. It's inefficient or dangerous, Zekathan mused. A species that can unite across artificial divisions could pose a threat to our expansion. What is their current technological level? Vextar manipulated the displays, showing Earth's space capabilities, primitive by our standards. They've barely left their home planet. But their advancement rate is accelerating exponentially, because of the knowledge-sharing behavior precisely. The females' innovations have advanced their propulsion technology by centuries in mere weeks. Zekathan's eyes narrowed. The Corvani Empire had conquered thousands of worlds by exploiting the same weakness in every species. their inability to truly cooperate. Civilizations always fractured along lines of class, race, or ideology. The strong dominated the weak, making them easy to defeat. But humans seemed different. They helped each other in ways that made no logical sense. Perhaps these humans are more dangerous than we thought, Zekathan decided. Continue observation. If they prove too unpredictable, we'll harvest their world before they become a threat. Back on Earth, Kishar worked late into the night, unaware that her salvation had attracted the attention of beings who saw kindness as a threat. The laboratory hummed with activity as robotic assistants build prototype engines according to her specifications. Holographic displays showed simulations of spacecraft dancing through gravitational fields like dolphins riding ocean currents. She paused at her workstation. Looking at a photo she'd taped to her monitor, it showed her daughter back in Detroit, smiling gap-toothed at the camera. Every equation she solved, every breakthrough she achieved, was for that little girl who deserved a future among the stars. Working late again, Minna appeared with 2 cups of coffee, the good stuff that cost more per pound than most people's rent. Can't sleep, Kishar admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see new possibilities. What if we could use this technology for more than just space travel? What if we could solve Earth's energy crisis? Minna sat down beside her. You're thinking big. I'm thinking about survival, Kishar said. Pulling up new calculations, something tells me we're going to need every advantage we can get. High above, Eli's eyes watched and recorded everything, never knowing that human intuition had already sensed the coming storm. The morning sky over Seoul had been clear and blue, but now it burned with unnatural light. Kishar looked up from her breakfast and dropped her coffee cup as massive shadows fell across the city. The cup shattered on the floor, but she barely heard it over the sound of her own heartbeat. Ships descended from the clouds like falling mountains. They were unlike anything in human imagination. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures, surfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with their own life. The largest vessel was easily 10 miles long, its hull shifting colors from silver to deep purple as it settled above the city center. Oh my God, Minna whispered, standing frozen at the laboratory window. They're real. They're actually real. Car alarms screamed across Seoul as the alien ship's electromagnetic fields interfered with every electronic device. Street lights flickered and died. Cell phones went dead. Even the advanced equipment at Daeho Industries sparked and shut down. Then the silence came. Every screen in the city, from massive billboards to tiny smartwatch displays, flickered back too. Live simultaneously, the alien message appeared in perfect Korean, English, Chinese, and every other human language. Humans of Earth. The voice was neither male nor female, but something else entirely. It resonated through speakers and directly into people's minds. You have been selected for evaluation. Your species will face a test. Solve the energy crisis that has plagued our civilization for millennia, or your world will be harvested. Panic erupted in the streets below. People ran in every direction, some toward their homes, others toward the city limits. But there was nowhere to hide from ships that could block out the sun dot at Daeho Industries. Emergency protocols activated. The building's military-grade bunker systems came online, sealing the research facility from the outside world. But Keisha knew that if these aliens wanted in, no human barrier would stop them. Emergency conference call in 5 minutes. Daeho announced over the intercom. All department heads to the main conference room. Now. The conference room filled with holographic projections as world leaders connected from secure bunkers round the globe. President Lee Namki appeared from the Blue House bunker, his face pale but determined. President Chen from Beijing looked grim. The Prime Minister of Japan spoke rapidly to his advisers. "What do we know?" President Lee asked. "Not much," admitted General Park, South Korea's top military officer. "Our fighters can't even get close to their ships. They have some kind of energy field that disables our electronics. This is Dr. Zhang, way from Beijing." Another hologram spoke up. The Chinese scientist looked exhausted, as if he'd been working non-stop since the ships appeared. "We've been analyzing their transmission. They want us to create unlimited energy without destroying matter. Every attempt we've made creates dangerous instabilities." "It's not possible with current physics," agreed Dr. Elena Petrov from Moscow. Her Russian accent was thick with stress. "We've run every simulation. Nuclear fusion, matter-antimatter reactions, even theoretical zero-point energy. Nothing works without massive risk." The alien equations floated in the air between them, complex, beyond human understanding, symbols that hurt to look at directly, mathematical concepts that seemed to bend reality around them. But Keisha studied them with growing excitement rather than fear. Something about the patterns reminded her of her grandmother's quilts, complex on the surface, but built from simple, repeating elements. "Wait," she said, standing up so suddenly that her chair rolled backward. "They're approaching this all wrong. They're trying to extract energy from matter. But what if energy comes from something else entirely?" The room fell silent. Every eye, both physical and holographic, turned to her. Deho leaned forward. "What do you mean? What if the energy source isn't physical at all?" Keisha moved to the holographic display, her hands dancing through the alien equations. "Look at these patterns. They're trying to break things apart to get energy. But what if the energy comes from putting things together? That's impossible," Dr. Petrov said. "Energy always comes from breaking bonds, not making them, does it?" Keisha pulled up her own calculations, the ones she'd been working on for weeks. "What if we've been thinking about this wrong? What if the most powerful energy in the universe doesn't come from splitting atoms or fusing matter? Outside, the alien ships settled into position around Earth's major cities. From the largest vessel, sleek forms began to descend. Corvani soldiers, in powered armor that moved like liquid metal. They were tall, elegant, and terrifying, their weapons glowing with energy that could vaporize a city block. Admiral Zekathan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth's cities through sensors that could count individual heartbeats. His forearms moved across controls that responded to his thoughts, coordinating the occupation of an entire planet. "Resistance is minimal," reported Commander Vextar. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, as expected," Zekathan replied. "Have they responded to our challenge? Their leaders are gathering their scientists. They have 72 hours to solve the energy crisis, and if they fail, then we harvest their world and move on to the next." Zekathan nodded. It was the same pattern they'd followed on 1,000 worlds. Present an impossible challenge. Watch the civilization tear itself apart trying to solve it. Then harvest the resources and move on. The strong survived. The weak perished. It was the natural order. But something about the human response bothered him on other worlds. The different factions had immediately started blaming each other. Wars had broken out, societies had collapsed before the Corvani even had to fire a shot. Instead, the humans were working together, sharing information, combining their efforts, monitor their progress closely. He ordered, if they show any sign of succeeding, eliminate their scientists immediately. Back in the conference room, Keisha was building something that looked like a child's toy, a simple frame with strings connecting different points. But when she touched one string, all the others vibrated in harmony. "Connection," she said softly. "The energy doesn't come from the matter itself. It comes from the connections between things. Minar gasped, "You're talking about quantum entanglement on a macro scale. Bigger than that," Keisha said, her voice growing strong. "What if consciousness itself creates energy? What if the act of caring, of choosing to help instead of harm, actually generates power?" The room erupted in arguments. Scientists shouted about impossible physics. Military leaders demanded practical weapons. Politicians worried about panic in the streets. But Deho watched Keisha's face and saw something that reminded him of that night in the rain. The same quiet certainty that had made him stop and listen to a stranger asking for leftovers. "How do we test it?" he asked. "We trust each other," Keisha said simply. "And we see what happens when we do." Outside, Corvani soldiers patrolled the streets, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Zekathan had given humanity 72 hours to solve an impossible problem. Time was running out. But maybe that was exactly what humanity needed. The countdown clock on every screen showed for us 27 minutes and 33 seconds. Keisha's hands shook as she put the final touches on her impossible device. Round her, the world's greatest minds worked frantically, but their faces showed the same thing: defeat. "It's not working," Dr. Zhongwei said, his voice cracking. "Every simulation ends in catastrophic failure. We're missing something fundamental. Maybe that's the point." Keisha whispered to herself. She'd been awake for 3 days straight, living on coffee and determination. But in those sleepless hours, she'd built something that looked more like art than science, a crystalline structure that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The device sat in the center of Deho Industries' main laboratory, surrounded by monitoring equipment that hummed with nervous energy. It was beautiful and strange, made from materials that shouldn't work together but somehow did, quantum processors next to ancient crystals. 5 optic cables woven through what looked like living coral. "Keisha, we need to try something else," Minna said gently. She'd been watching her friend push herself to the breaking point. "The alien equations are too complex. No one can solve them in time. That's because we're solving the wrong problem," Keisha said. Standing up so fast her chair spun away, her eyes were bright with exhaustion and inspiration. "We've been thinking like them. But what if that's our mistake? Outside, Seoul streets had become a war zone of fear. Corvani soldiers patrolled in their flying armor, weapons that could melt steel hanging casually at their sides. Their ships cast shadows over the city, and occasionally one would fire a beam of light that would vaporize a building just to remind everyone who was in charge. But in the laboratory, something was about to change everything. Admiral Zekathan materialized in the room as a hologram, his massive form towering over the human scientists. His forearms moved like a conductor directing an orchestra of destruction, and his mandibles clicked with impatience. "Time grows short. Humans," he announced. "Have you solved our energy crisis?" "The answer isn't in your equations," Keisha said, her voice steady despite the weight of humanity's fate resting on her shoulders. She walked to her device, placing her hands on its surface. "It's in something you don't understand. Connection." Admiral Zekathan's translator rendered his scoffing laugh as a sound like breaking glass. "Explain." "This connection. When Deho helped me that night in the rain. When Minna welcomed me to the team. When humans choose to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. That creates energy. Real, measurable energy. Impossible." Commander Vextar sneered, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "Energy comes from matter, from fusion, from the breaking of atomic bonds, not from emotions." "You're wrong," Keisha said, activating her device. The crystalline structure began to glow with soft blue light. "Minna, take my hand." Minna hesitated for just a moment, then reached out and clasped Keisha's hand. The moment their skin touched, The device erupted in brilliant light. Energy readings spiked across every monitor in the room. "That's impossible," Dr. Petrov gasped, staring at her instruments. "The energy output is... it's off the charts. Now you..." Keisha said to Deho, extending her other hand. "Trust me." Deho stepped forward without hesitation, taking her hand. The moment the three humans connected, the energy output doubled. The device sang with harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. This is, Nixar stammered, her tentacles dancing frantically over her instruments. "Commander, the energy readings are beyond our understanding." One by one, other scientists in the room joined the connection. Dr. Zhang Wei, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Petrov, her scientific skepticism overwhelmed by wonder. General Park, setting aside his military training to trust in something he couldn't explain. With each new connection, the energy output increased exponentially. The device at the center of their circle began to levitate, rotating slowly as it channeled forces that shouldn't exist. "This is what you've been missing," Keisha said, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the room despite the incredible energy surrounding them. "Your empire is built on domination, on separation. You take from others to make yourselves stronger. But when beings connect, when they choose to help instead of harm, they create something more powerful than any weapon." The energy readings went off every chart. The aliens had. The simple act of humans choosing to trust each other had generated enough power to run their entire city. But it was more than that. The energy was clean, sustainable, and seemed to grow stronger the more people joined the connection. Admiral Zekathan stared at the readings in shock, his forearms frozen at his sides. "How is this possible?" "Because," Deho said, stepping forward while maintaining his connection to the group, "we learned something your empire never did. Strength doesn't come from standing above others. It comes from lifting them up." The holographic display showed power levels that made the aliens' most advanced reactors look like candles. But more than that, it showed something else. The energy was somehow intelligent, responsive to the emotions and intentions of those who created it. "You've spent millennia conquering worlds," Keisha continued, "taking what you needed from others. But you never learned to give. You never learned that when you help someone else succeed, you become stronger too." Commander Vexstar backed away from his instruments as if they might explode. "This violates every law of physics we know." "No," Minna said, her voice filled with wonder. "It reveals laws we never knew existed. Laws that can only be discovered when you stop thinking of others as enemies and start thinking of them as family." The connection now included dozens of people, scientists, soldiers, politicians, even some of the alien observers who had been studying Earth. Each connection added to the power, but also to something else: understanding. For the first time in their history, the Corvani were experiencing what it felt like to be part of something larger than themselves. The sensation was overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful all at once. "We could have destroyed you," Admiral Zekathan said, his voice smaller now, more uncertain. "Our weapons could have cracked your planet in half. But you didn't," Keisha replied. "You gave us a chance to prove ourselves. Maybe, deep down, you were hoping we'd show you a better way." The energy field now encompassed the entire building, then the city block, then began spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Wherever it touched, people stopped fighting and started helping each other. Panic became cooperation. Fear became hope. "What have you done?" Zekathan whispered. "We've shown you the future," Deho said. "A future where strength comes from connection, not conquest, where the goal isn't to take from others, but to give them the power to become their best selves." the alien ships above Seoul began to change, their weapons powering down as the energy field reached them. For the first time in their history, the Corvani were experiencing peace. 1 year had passed since the day the sky burned with alien ships, and Seoul looked like a city from a science fiction dream. Floating gardens drifted between skyscrapers, their roots drawing nutrients from the air, while their flowers bloomed in impossible colors. Corvani architects had taught humans how to grow buildings instead of constructing them, and the result was breathtaking. The interspecies cooperation center rose from the heart of the city like a living crystal, its walls shifting between transparent and opaque as needed. Inside, beings from 17 different worlds worked side by side, their combined knowledge pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Keisha Williams stood at the center's main podium, wearing a dress that seemed to be made from captured starlight. As the facility's director, she'd overseen the transformation of an entire galaxy's understanding of power and cooperation, but today, she felt like that same desperate woman who'd asked for leftovers in the rain. It's hard to believe how much has changed, she said to the crowd of thousands. Humans sat next to Corvani, their former enemies now their closest allies. Children from a dozen worlds played in the audience, their laughter creating a symphony of pure joy. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed the galaxy as it existed now, not as territories controlled by different empires, but as a network of connected worlds sharing resources and knowledge freely. The humans have taught us that what we called weakness was actually strength, former Admiral Zekathan said, his massive form somehow gentle now. He'd traded his military armor for the simple robes of an ambassador. For millennia, we believed that power came from domination. We were wrong. The audience erupted in applause that sounded like music. Humans clapped. Corvani clicked their mandibles in approval, and the crystalline Vexoni chimed like wind bells. In the front row, Deho watched with pride as his former enemies spoke about cooperation. The transformation had been remarkable. The Corvani Empire had disbanded their military hierarchy, learning to channel their natural competitiveness into collaborative science instead of conquest. We've developed technologies that our ancestors would have called magic, Zekathan continued. Ships that travel faster than light, powered not by fuel but by the crew's mutual trust and support. Cities that heal themselves when damaged. Weapons that create instead of destroy. He gestured to the displays around them, showing spacecraft that looked more like living creatures than machines. These vessels could cross the galaxy in days, their crews working together to literally think their way through hyperspace. But the greatest discovery, Zekathan said, his voice growing softer, was learning that helping others doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible. Millionaire took the stage next, her small form commanding attention despite being surrounded by beings twice her size. She'd led the team that developed the first connection-powered spacecraft, and her work had revolutionized space travel for every species in the galaxy. Our ships don't just carry passengers, she explained, activating a holographic model of their latest vessel. They carry relationships. The stronger the bonds between crew members, the faster and farther the ship can travel. The audience watched in wonder as the hologram showed a spacecraft accelerating to impossible speeds, its hull glowing with energy generated by the crew's shared purpose and mutual care. We've had ships reach the Andromeda Galaxy in less than a week, Millionaire continued, not because of bigger engines or more fuel, but because the crew genuinely loved and trusted each other. The technology was being shared freely across the galaxy. No patents, no restrictions, no attempts to profit from the discovery. The act of giving it away had somehow made it stronger. It all started with leftovers, Keisha said, taking the podium again. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. amplified not by technology, but by the attention of every being present. One man saw a stranger in need and chose kindness over indifference. That single moment of humanity changed everything. She looked out at the audience, her eyes finding Deho in the crowd. He smiled back, remembering that rainy night outside the restaurant. He'd thought he was just helping one person. He'd actually saved two worlds. People ask me how he solved the energy crisis. Keisha continued. They want to know the science behind connection power. But the real answer is simpler than any equation. We learn to see each other as family. In the audience, a small girl with purple skin and silver eyes raised her hand. She was Korvani. But she'd been born on Earth and spoke Korean as her first language. Miss Keisha, she said, her voice carrying the innocent curiosity of childhood. My daddy says you used to be sad and hungry. Is that true? Keisha's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. Yes, little one. I was very sad and very hungry. What made you feel better? The friend shared his food with me. And then he shared his hope, and then he shared his dreams and pretty. Soon, I wasn't hungry anymore, not for food and not for hope either. The child nodded solemnly, then brightened. I want to share my hope too. The audience erupted in laughter and applause. This was the generation that would inherit the galaxy, children who'd never known a universe, divided by fear and conquest. As the celebration continued, those children played together in the center's gardens. Human kids chased Korvani younglings through floating flower beds, while Vexoni crystalline children sang harmony that made the plants grow taller. Their laughter echoed across the stars. Carried by connection-powered communication rays too, every world in the galaxy. Former enemies had become family. The strong had learned to lift up the weak. And somewhere in the vast cosmic web of relationships that now connected 17 worlds, new energy was being born every second. The miracle hadn't been in the technology or the energy readings. It hadn't been in the ships that could cross galaxies, or the weapons that could build instead of destroy. The miracle had been in the moment when two strangers chose to see each other as worthy of care. One asking for help, the other choosing to give it. In that simple exchange, they discovered the most powerful force in the universe, the decision to treat others with kindness. Now that force was spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond, touching every world, every species, every heart that was willing to open. The former street woman and the billionaire had become partners in humanity's greatest adventure, teaching the galaxy that true power comes not from what you take, but from what you give. And in the gardens of the Interspecies Cooperation Center, as alien children played under Earth's sun, the future looked brighter than any star. The end.